Deep thinking, a different way to see yourself. Why can't we just sit still? Silence used to be part of ordinary life, something that required no explanation. Now it feels increasingly rare, almost out of place in a world that is constantly reacting. Blaise Pascal once wrote, "All of humanity's problems stem from man's inability to sit quietly in a room alone." His observation suggests that silence is not simply the absence of sound. Silence has not disappeared, but our willingness to remain in it may have changed. Perhaps the issue is not noise itself, but what silence exposes. First, silence removes distraction, and our thoughts surface more clearly. Second, silence slows time. In a culture that values speed and response, stillness can feel like falling behind. And third, silence offers no performance. There is nothing to display, nothing to prove, and nothing to scroll past. Silence becomes something to manage rather than something to enter. And perhaps that quiet shift says more about us than the noise itself. So now, what if you asked yourself, do I avoid silence because it brings unresolved questions closer? Or have I simply grown, used to filling every pause without noticing why?
What would you honestly say? Let's keep going a little deeper.
Do I still own what I feel? We tend to believe our feelings are entirely our own. They seem to arise from experience, memory, and reflection. David Hume once wrote, "Reason is, and ought only to be the slave of the passions." Emotion, he suggested, often guides our judgments, more than logic does. If that is true, then feelings shape not only reactions, but identity. The question is whether they begin within or outside us. Maybe the issue is not that we feel less, but that we feel on cue. First, repeated exposure influences emotion. When certain themes appear constantly, they quietly define what seems urgent or meaningful. Second, shared reactions create pressure. When many respond the same way, it becomes difficult to feel differently. And third, speed replaces reflection. We respond instantly, without asking, whether the feeling is ours or borrowed. Over time, emotion becomes patterned. We may begin to react automatically, mistaking familiarity for authenticity. So now, what if you asked yourself, when I feel strongly, do I pause to ask where that feeling began? Do I recognize my own emotions, or only the ones most visible around me?
What would you honestly say? Let's keep going a little deeper.
Who am I without approval? Today, identity is often shaped by recognition. Without response, we begin to question whether we still exist as we are. Jean-Paul Sartre once wrote, "If you are lonely when you're alone, you are in bad company." His words suggest that identity is not proven by applause. It is revealed in solitude and steadied without applause. If recognition disappears, something inside us becomes uncertain. That uncertainty reveals more than approval ever could. Maybe identity has grown more dependent on approval than we realize. First, approval accelerates comparison. Value becomes measurable through response rather than reflection. Second, approval creates performance. We learn to present versions of ourselves designed for reception. And third, approval can quietly redefine identity. We begin adjusting tone, opinion, even conviction to remain acceptable. Over time, the self shifts from something discovered to something managed. And in that shift, self-worth becomes something we manage for response, rather than something we hold with conviction. So now, what if you asked yourself, who am I when there is no audience to affirm me? And if approval vanished, what part of me would remain unchanged?
What would you honestly say? Let's keep going a little deeper.
Am I using it or is it using me? We rarely notice the moment something begins to shape us. It does not arrive with a clear signal or decision. Instead, it quietly enters through repetition. A glance, a scroll, a notification answered without thinking. Over time, these small actions begin to organize our attention, and what we repeatedly attend to starts to influence how we think, not by force, but by constant presence. The influence often feels neutral. It blends into daily life, almost invisible. First, attention becomes direction. What we return to repeatedly begins to guide what we notice, slowly shaping what we consider important. Second, reaction becomes habit. How we respond to each alert trains our pace of thinking and conditions what feels normal to us. And third, repetition reshapes identity. What we engage with most consistently begins to define how we see ourselves, often without reflection or intention. So now, what if you asked yourself, what is my attention being trained to follow each day? And if this pattern continues, who am I gradually becoming?
What would you honestly say? Let's keep going a little deeper.
Am I busy or just becoming it? We often describe our days with a single word, busy. It sounds productive, even necessary. When someone asks how we are, it becomes an easy answer. Over time, it starts to feel like more than a schedule. It begins to reflect who we are. Being busy no longer describes what we do. It starts to shape how we see ourselves. And without noticing, we begin to carry it as part of our identity. Perhaps busyness has become more than activity. First, it replaces reflection. We fill our time so completely that we rarely pause to ask why we are doing any of it. Second, it creates a sense of worth. We begin to measure ourselves by how occupied we are, rather than what truly matters. And third, it becomes a shield. Staying busy allows us to avoid discomfort or deeper questions. Over time, busyness is no longer something we manage, but something that quietly begins to manage us. So now, what if you asked yourself, if I stopped being busy, who would I feel myself becoming? And how much of my busyness is chosen rather than simply continued?
What would you honestly say? Let's keep going a little deeper.
Why does silence feel so hard? Silence used to be a natural part of our day. Moments without sound or distraction were simply there. But now, even a few seconds of quiet can feel uncomfortable. We reach for something to fill the space, a screen, a voice, a thought. Stillness begins to feel unfamiliar. Without noise, we are left alone with ourselves. And without noticing, silence shifts from something neutral to something we quietly try to avoid. Perhaps silence has become harder to face than we realize. First, we fill every gap. We turn to sound or activity whenever a moment feels empty, as if quiet must be replaced. Second, we avoid inner space. Without distraction, thoughts and feelings surface more clearly, and we are left to face them. And third, we lose tolerance for stillness. We become less comfortable sitting with ourselves without input. Over time, silence no longer feels restful, but begins to feel like something we need to escape from. So now, what if you asked yourself, Why does silence feel uncomfortable to me? And what might I hear if I stopped trying to fill it?
What would you honestly say? Let's keep going a little deeper.
Why do I feel worse after scrolling? Scrolling often begins without intention. We open a screen for a moment, then stay longer than expected. Images, videos, and short clips pass by quickly. Each one holds our attention just long enough to move to the next. Time seems to disappear while we continue. Yet when we stop, something feels off. Despite constant stimulation, there is a quiet sense of emptiness that lingers after everything else has ended. Perhaps scrolling gives us more input than meaning. First, comparison quietly increases. We see fragments of others' lives and begin to measure our own against them. Second, attention is constantly interrupted. We shift from one piece of content to another, without staying long enough to engage with anything. And third, nothing settles. What we consume rarely connects or stays with us in a lasting way. Over time, we take in more, but feel less, as if something meaningful never had the chance to form. So now, what if you asked yourself, what am I really looking for when I keep scrolling? And why does it feel missing once I finally stop?
What would you honestly say? Let's keep going a little deeper.
Is rest controlling me? Rest is meant to restore our energy, not to consume our attention. Blaise Pascal once wrote, "All of humanity's problems stem from man's inability to sit quietly in a room alone." His words suggest that rest is not simply the absence of activity. It requires a willingness to be still without constant stimulation. But in a world of endless content, stillness becomes harder to sustain, and rest can slowly turn into something else. Perhaps the issue is not that we fail to rest, but that we redefine what rest means. First, stimulation replaces stillness. We turn to screens and constant input, believing it helps us relax. Second, distraction feels effortless. True rest requires intention, but distraction happens automatically. And third, noise becomes comfort. Silence can feel unfamiliar, even uncomfortable, so we avoid it without noticing. Over time, we may spend hours resting, while our minds remain occupied, never fully recovering or resetting. So now, what if you asked yourself, when I rest, am I actually allowing my mind to be still? Or am I simply replacing one form of activity with another?
What would you honestly say? Let's keep going a little deeper.
Am I recording instead of living? We often feel the urge to capture moments before they disappear. Susan Sontag once wrote, "To photograph is to appropriate the thing photographed." Her words suggest that recording a moment can change how we relate to it. It shifts us from participants to observers. Yet as cameras become constant, we may begin to experience life through recording, and what we capture may slowly replace what we actually live and remember. Perhaps the issue is not documenting life, but how it shapes our attention. First, presence is interrupted. We shift from experiencing to framing, thinking about how a moment appears. Second, memory is outsourced. We rely on images to remember, instead of fully engaging in the moment itself. And third, experience becomes performance. Moments are shaped for capture rather than lived as they unfold. Over time, life begins to feel like something we record, instead of something we directly experience. So now, what if you asked yourself, when I record a moment, am I fully present in it? Am I living the experience or preparing it to be captured?
What would you honestly say? Let's keep going a little deeper. If you took a moment to reflect, that's already enough. See you in the next one.